1, 5:20 in the morning. And yes, I am back again to share yet another experience. An experience that was, for me, unfortunately, kind of messy because it was multiple experiences and I can really only remember one. I'm only really bringing back one for you guys. But always, I'm thinking of you as I'm making these trips. I want to remember as much as I possibly can. So let me get into the trip that I can remember. By the way, I had on storm sounds again. That seems to be a very consistent thing with me lately. Storm sounds. And again, there were multiple trips, but I am going to bring you the one that I can remember. After getting up for a moment, going to the restroom, I came back to bed, shut my eyes, and it didn't take long before I could feel the sensation of movement, and I felt hands picking me up in the darkness. Strong, powerful hands. Like the previous experience, guys, this was very similar in that way. These hands were very strong, very powerful. They put me onto my feet, and it wasn't long before the darkness lifted. I was in a library, and there were books. Many books. I couldn't tell you specifically how many there were, but I will tell you that there were many of them. And these books, as I walked and as I was just observing, I noticed that these books had a very unusual shape. They weren't rectangles like the usual book you would see. You know, I know now we have other types of things we use to read books, but I'm talking about hardcover books, normal books. They were not rectangular books that I saw here. These books had a triangular shape. They were shaped like triangles. And the other unusual part to this, the other unusual thing that I observed was the fact that these books, these triangular books, the triangle was angled to the left side. They seemed to all come out at that same exact angle. Very strange. The other thing that I observed about these books, they each had dark covers, and on these covers were tiny stars all over them. And it was each book that I saw had this very similar look to it. I decided that I was going to attempt to read a title. And again, this is because I think of you and I think I want to bring something back for you. I want to bring a title back, something. So that was the first thing on my mind. The first thing on my mind was to bring back a title. So I attempted to read a title on one of the books. Now, there was a problem with this, and this was a problem that I've had previously. In a previous experience that I had where I believe I traveled back through time, at least that's what it appeared to be. It was one of my very early beyond body experiences. I had gone back to perhaps the 50s or the 60s. And I saw these cars and I decided that I was going to look at a registration tag on the back of a car as hard as I attempted to read that registration tag, I was unable to read it. The numbers didn't make sense. They were all turned around. I literally felt as if I was dyslexic, as if the words or the numbers were jumbled, where the same thing happened here. I recall picking up one of the books and just staring at it, and trying to read this word. I know that the title started with a G, there was an H, then there was an A, and then there were all these other letters, and I could not pronounce it. Maybe Gualan, you know what? No, that's nonsensical. No, it doesn't make sense. It seemed to me that the letters were transposed or were all jumbled, and I could not read it. For some reason, the word ghoulies came to mind, and that's for those of you listening that are either older or love older films, because that film was made back in the 80s and it was a classic movie, Ghoulies. I don't know why I thought of that. I don't know why that title seemed to make sense to me in that moment, but for some reason it did. The other thing that I thought as I was looking at these books was I thought isosceles triangle. I don't know if that was a way for me to perhaps remember the books that I was seeing, remember that these were the shapes of the books. Isosceles, these were not isosceles triangles. They did not, I think, at least to my perception, appear to have two equal sides as isosceles triangles do. So I don't know why I thought it was an isosceles triangle, but that was the word that popped into my mind as I was looking at these books. I saw other titles too, but to be honest with you, I cannot remember the other titles. I just remember the first few letters of the first one that I saw. So, guys, I wish I could have brought more back for you on this one, but I was not able to. At this point, these seats, I noticed that there were seats in front of this bookshelf that had all these books, and people began coming in and sitting down. And it was unusual because I don't recall that anyone was picking up a book and sitting down to read it. It appeared that these people were just sitting down and staring at these books and not attempting to read them. At least, again, from my perception. And I know I see these things sometimes through the filter of my mind that's trying to make sense of what is happening. Guys, remember that even though I'm seeing something that appears to be a simple thing, this may have been much more complex or much deeper than I thought it was as they were staring at these books. This may have been the way in this reality that they absorb information, not by actually reading words, but looking at these unusual books. I don't know. But it's so fascinating, right, guys? It is so fascinating because even though I can't quite figure out what it was that they were doing in that moment and why those people were sitting there, it's just interesting because it's so different than where we live, the books and what they do perhaps to read to get that information. I'm not sure. So these people just continue to sit, and soon after I opened my eyes back in this physical reality. But it's interesting. And what's interesting is that I think there was a moment when, after this happened, I opened my eyes, but I opened my eyes in yet another reality. And that is something I can't quite recall. So there was a few moments before I was back here and I was able to sit and record this for you. And again, multiple experiences tonight. And this was a bit messy, and I don't like it to be messy. I like it to be pretty straightforward. This happens, and then this happens. But it did not happen like that. And there was a previous experience that I cannot recall. So if I begin to recall this, or if I recall this experience later, I will definitely share it with you. For now, I'm going to leave it here at this one very unusual experience. And I look forward to hearing your thoughts on what you think. Very, very interesting. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on this very unusual journey with me. And until next time, take care.